Good evening and welcome to another edition of Around Town. I'm your host, David D'Arcangelo, and with me today is Chair of the Massachusetts State Gaming Commission, Steve Crosby. Steve, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for
back, we were on another program,
Yep.
Malden Public Radio, for our faithful viewers out there, and now this is your first appearance on Around Town, so good to see you again.
Great. Nice to be back. Thanks.
So today we're hoping to inform our audience in the Malden area. This show is seen in Malden, Melrose, Stoneham, Wakefield, around this area. Hoping to talk a little bit about your background in government, which you have an extensive background, a little bit of how gaming came to Massachusetts, where we are in the process of selecting the applications. I believe that deadline is closed.
Yep.
Then maybe some of the areas that we're looking at and some of the impacts on Massachusetts. So
Great.
why don't we start with a little bit of your history? I know you have a long history in government.
Yeah.
I was fortunate to be a colleague in the Cellucci-Swift administration when you were the Secretary of A&F, I believe.
Yeah, right. Actually, my background, I'm more in the private sector than in the public sector. People don't know that, but I spent most of my professional life as an entrepreneurial businessman. But in the public sector, I've been off and on, in and out. I was in Washington years ago as an AA to Congresswoman Margaret Heckler.
Okay,
Most recently, I was, as you know, Secretary of Administration and Finance under Governor Cellucci and then Governor Swift. And then Governor Swift had me become her Chief of Staff for her last year. Then I ended up being the Dean of the Graduate School of Public Policy at UMass Boston.
Oh, that was great.
For my last 6 years, from 2006 to 2012.
How was that experience?
It was extraordinary. It's a great campus. You know, I love public policy. That's what I've been doing one way or the other. Even in my business life, it's been related to public policy.
Sure.
So it was great. It was a great opportunity. I figured I'd retire there. And then along comes Governor Patrick and says, would I be interested in being chair of the Gaming Commission? I said, what?
Well, a nice choice. You're a man of high integrity, and it takes a special person to really be able to guide this process. It had been discussed for years.
Yeah.
Will it come? Will it not?
Right.
Maybe you can take us a little bit of how we arrived at this point of where it's imminent.
Well, as you say, it's been debated in Massachusetts for certainly 20, maybe 30 years. And usually the governors have been opposed to it. There's been some support. Oftentimes the racetracks have been supportive because they've thought that maybe you could add a casino or a slots parlor to a racetrack, help support the racetracks. But it's never gone anywhere really until Governor Patrick became governor, and he kind of went to a mountaintop and thought about it and decided, you know what, it's happening everywhere around us. Maybe it's not the best thing in the world in some people's point of view, but we could use the revenue, we could use the jobs, a lot of people enjoy it. I think I'll be in favor. So then they had to negotiate with the House and the Senate to get the right bill, and it didn't happen a couple of times. But eventually, November of 2011, they signed the legislation to create as many as 3 casinos in Massachusetts, 1 in each of 3 regions, and as many as 1 slots parlor located anywhere in Massachusetts.
Okay.
And then he asked me to be the chair, so here I am.
Well, that's great. And I guess part of the impetus around it was we felt that a lot of the dollars going into Mohegan Sun and Foxwoods and some of these other casinos were from Massachusetts. So I think the idea was let's try to keep that in Mass. And with tourism being such a big thing in Massachusetts, we can probably build on that as well and maybe get some outside dollars coming in.
Right. Well, that's clearly the idea. I mean, the governor's first priority, bar none, is job generation and economic development. I think the legislature shares that priority. There also will be tax revenues, maybe as much as $250, $350, $400 million a year, which is real money.
That's significant.
But it's more for the jobs and economic development. And as you say, apparently there's about $1 billion a year where Massachusetts residents are going to our neighboring states and gambling. And that's just going to people in other states. So that's easy money to try to repatriate those dollars. So yeah, I think they just decided, you know, we might as well get with the program and get the benefits that can accrue through expanded gaming and work very hard to minimize the downsides and try to do this as well as we possibly can.
You mentioned jobs, and I know there's been several studies done. Maybe you could give us a range of the low end and the high end and what types of jobs we're looking at?
Well, it's a range. There's everything. It's not just the casinos, of course. They'll be building facilities around the casinos. Each of them will probably have a hotel. There'll be restaurants and so on and so forth. So the jobs are everything from entry-level housekeeping jobs to waiter, bartender type jobs, all the way up through the casino floor, security, pit bosses, dealers, And then, you know, chief financial officers and accountants and so forth.
And those are the long term, let alone the short term of building the
And then
casinos
the
and all
construction
the stuff.
jobs is another whole category. So the numbers are something like 10 or 12,000 construction jobs.
Wow.
If we build all 4 facilities, and in the long run, 10 or 12,000 permanent jobs running these facilities once they're up and running. Now, what we don't want to do is just take jobs away from one place and move them to the casinos. That's no net gain at all. So the legislature has directed us, and we're trying very hard to make sure that this is incremental, that they don't just come in and swipe business from one restaurant and move it to their restaurant. That doesn't help anybody.
Right. Now, take us through the timetable. You mentioned November 2011 when it was enacted and put into law. And now I guess the Gaming Commission, which you chair, has spent the past year going through a process, creating, you had to do it really everything, creating the process, the applications, everything from scratch. Maybe you can tell our viewers a little bit about that process.
Yeah. Well, it's actually only been 10 months. The commission didn't get started until April of last year.
Oh, I see. So it hasn't even been a full year yet.
Hasn't even been a full year yet.
Done a lot in a year.
Yeah. Well,
in 10 months.
Right. But we had nothing. You know, we didn't have office space. We didn't have business cards. We didn't have telephones, staff, nothing. We had 5 full-time commissioners. And that was all. So we had to build an organization for starters.
Sure.
And that's in itself takes some time.
Absolutely.
And then we had to lay out the entire process. The legislature laid out a lot of the process and mandated a lot of the process. But there are hundreds and hundreds of pages of regulations about how you do this, how you keep it fair, how you keep the bad guys out, how you do proper background checks, how you license everybody who's involved.
So this is everything from the selection process to actually running the games themselves and all.
That's which games will we permit? You know, which slot machines can they use? You know,
and starting from square one, that's a pretty big endeavor.
Yeah, it is a big endeavor, but we feel really good about it. I think we've moved along pretty quickly. We decided to break the application process into 2 sections. Phase 1 is basically background checks.
Okay.
You will not do business in Massachusetts in the gambling world unless and until you have passed an exhaustive background check on your financial status and on your corporate and personal integrity and character and background.
And I think that's a very important distinction to make. As a city councilor here in Malden, I know a lot of people have asked me, you know, who's going to get these licenses? And I think it's pretty clear that the entities getting these licenses are big corporations with very significant and very sophisticated people involved, and you know they're all clean. And I mean, what would you say it rises to the level of like an FBI background check?
It's very. These background checks, the paperwork is almost this thick. It goes to everything. You have to have your identifying scars and birthmarks.
Really?
Because some people say they're somebody who they really aren't, and so you can double check and say if you got to really have a scar. It goes to the number of cars that your dependent children own, because you might be pretending that they're not really your cars.
Right.
You know, and then all of your business dealings, your criminal record. It costs between $400,000 and $1 million to do these background checks.
Wow.
Many of these companies are international, so they're doing business in Macau, in Singapore.
And it's not just one person you're backgrounding,
no,
it's a
all
whole
the major
team.
Players, all their investors.
Right, wow.
So it's a big, big job.
Now the application fee too is very significant. It's $400,000.
$400,000 is the one-time non-refundable deposit.
And I would imagine that probably just pays for the
background.
Pays for the background check.
We don't keep any of that money, so the background checks are all paid for by the companies themselves.
Okay.
So that process is now underway. The applications were due January 15th, and they are now all in. There are 11 different entities who are applying either for a slots license or for a casino license.
Okay, so they're vying for one of the 4.
One of the 4.
One of the 4. One of the 3 casinos and one of the slots.
Right, and the 3 casinos are in the 3 different regions of Massachusetts. Eastern Mass, which includes all the North Shore and Worcester County.
I see.
Western Mass, which is the 4 western counties, and Southeastern Mass, which is Plymouth on down, Cape and Islands, Fall River, New Bedford.
And then one in Western?
Western Mass is the 4 western counties.
Right? I see.
And then the slots parlor can go anywhere in Massachusetts.
I see, okay.
So the process is now underway. We hope that the background checks will take as little as 3 months. Sometimes it's going to be 6 for the bigger, more complicated ones.
Sure.
But if you pass the background check, if an entity and all its major players pass the background check, Then you get to phase 2 of the application,
Which is
the building
right.
itself, the jobs.
Look at my nice glass tower,
right,
and
exactly,
here's all the things we're going to do. Okay, so
Which
maybe we
that'll
can
be the exciting part, but we're not to that part yet.
right. Maybe we can kind of look ahead. I know you haven't gone into that, and we're not going to hold you to it. But maybe we could talk about some of the potential areas that have been discussed in the media. So this way, we're not putting you on the spot, picking one over the other.
Right.
But I know around here, a lot of people have heard nearby that Everett has made an application. The old Monsanto site, Suffolk Downs, has made an application over there. Maybe we could talk a little bit about the prospects for gaming in the Boston area.
Well, first of all, we felt very strongly that competition is important. The legislature laid out a process by which there's a competitive bid for each of these licenses. They understood, and we understand, that you're not going to get the best that these companies have to offer unless there's real competition for the licenses, especially the Eastern Mass license, which is the most profitable and the biggest deal. So we've worked very hard to make sure everybody understands that this is a level playing field. No die is cast. Nobody has a head start. I mean, people have head starts, but they don't have any head start in terms of winning the job.
From the commission.
From the commission, right. And as long as we can persuade everybody that this is a level playing field, and it's not a political process, it's really going to be on the merits of the proposal, then that encourages other folks to start coming in. So now we have robust competition in Eastern Mass. That we know of, we have 3 sites. One is the Suffolk Downs site, which you talked about.
Okay.
And that's a conglomeration of people and organizations, but with Caesars as the
as the gaming component of it. Yeah.
Right. Then there is Wynn Resorts, the Everett site, the old Monsanto chemical site.
Yep.
And then there is another site in Milford, Mass.
Okay.
Out on the intersection of 495 and 95. Or 90, where a guy named David Nunes, who's a big real estate developer, has got a partnership with I forget what gaming company. So there's at least 3 that'll be competing in Eastern
this
Mass.
area. Yeah.
And there are 2 other companies, Rush Gaming and Cordish Gaming, or Cordish Development, that have not identified which license they're going after yet and which site. So there could be another one in Eastern Mass as well.
So they might be going for the slots, or maybe the gaming, full gaming.
Or it could be in a different region. It might be Western Mass.
Okay.
So in Eastern Mass, which is what matters to your viewers, you've got 2 sites that are pretty close, and then you've got a more rural site out in Milford, which would be probably 45 minutes away from here. And assuming those 3 companies get through the background check, then they will start talking, to the local communities. They'll be talking to local communities anyway. To make their pitch, to say, here's why we think you should support us, to assess whether there are going to be negative impacts, like traffic is the obvious one, and if there are going to be negative impacts, how are we going to mitigate those impacts? Malden, I'm sure, would be, or I'm not sure, but I would expect would be an affected community, excuse me, a so-called surrounding community.
Right, with either one, with either
probably
location.
either one, yeah.
Route 99, Route 1, both go through Malden.
Right.
So.
Malden doesn't abut East Boston, does it?
No. I think it's probably 3-4 miles away from one tip.
So, but anyway, there certainly will be impacts, and both developers will be coming to Malden if they haven't already. You could probably tell me about this.
Yeah.
And
well, as city councilor, we had sent a letter that I know you had saw to one of the developers early on when we recognized that they were going to be sending an application saying, hey, look, we're open to talk, and it's pretty straightforward, but letting them know that we would like to be part of the process when that point comes. I think we're still a little ways away from that, though.
Yeah, because their first priority is their host community.
Yeah.
But
and getting their application approved.
And getting their application approved, all the background check and stuff, right. But we do have, you probably know this, so we have a full-time person, an ombudsman, John Ziemba, who is very familiar with all this process, very familiar with the law, and he's going around and talking to all the potential surrounding communities, public officials like yourself.
Yeah, I work with John in the governor's office.
Okay, yeah, all right. Yeah. So to help make sure that the surrounding communities know what the rules are, how to negotiate with the developers and so forth. And
that's something we could talk about. We got your draft that had come across this past week, looking for the input to the various, I guess, is it the rules and regulations that will be promulgated around it? Because there's another whole set of that stuff that will happen as well. So it's a very thorough process here that we're going through. So I think people can know that we're making our way through this. And what do you think going forward, timetable-wise?
but just on the process, I want to mention one thing. When we started this out, we set out the objective that this be in fact and perceived as a participatory, transparent, and fair process. And it is participatory. You're just referring to it. We've taken very few substantive steps without first looking for public comment.
Which is great.
All of our meetings are public.
Which
all
is
of our
great.
meetings are on the web. Everything is posted on our website. We talk to all the communities. Everything is advertised. Public hearings galore. So it's participatory. It couldn't be more transparent. Frankly, it's awkward sometimes. You're familiar with this.
Yeah.
Public meeting law. You know, we have all of our meetings in public. We can't talk about anything as a group. And only two of us can talk about, I mean, we can talk about the Red Sox, but we can't talk about our work until we're in a public meeting. And ultimately then it has to be fair. As I said, it has to be perceived as fair and it has to be fair.
And in the long run, that will bear good fruit for
No
Massachusetts.
question about it.
I really
That's-
believe that.
And many states, as you know, have gone off the tracks by
Yeah.
having there be real funny business or perceptions of funny business and perceptions of favoritism as well as real favoritism. And it just sours the whole process.
You can never put that
slows-
toothpaste back in the
you
tube.
never- You're absolutely right.
Never
So-
do it. And I think Massachusetts, we're fortunate to have the stuff we have here is done very well, and it, by all accounts, that's what's going on here.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to
Yeah.
whatever's developed is
Well,
going to be very robust.
Knock on wood, I'm not counting my chickens yet.
No,
But
you
I'll
can't.
tell you, the legislature, and this is important for your viewers to know, the legislature wrote a great law. They really gave us the tools to do the job. They did a tremendous amount of research. We have the resources to do community mitigation properly, to do law enforcement
Sure.
properly, to do problem gambling interventions and research properly. It's a really good law.
Yeah, we had Speaker DeLeo on a few shows ago. I think Francis was a couple shows ago, and he really indicated that they did do so much due
Right.
diligence on it, and used some of the best features from different
did,
states,
right.
from Nevada, from all over.
We hear
some of the-
from regulators in other states all the time that they wish they had our law.
That's
that
great.
We really have the tools to do the job.
That's
right.
great. And I
So-
think that's one of the benefits of probably waiting over
Yeah,
these years,
right. I'm sure
being
you're
able
right.
to pick and choose a little bit.
Right.
So
That's right.
maybe we could talk about some of the other locations. You mentioned the Boston area. What can the folks in Western Mass expect, and what can the folks down in the South Coast expect?
Western Mass has been a very competitive site from the get-go. There are 4 serious players in Western Mass.
Wow, okay.
Mohegan Sun is in the town of Palmer. MGM and Penn National are in the city of Springfield, and Hard Rock is in the city of West Springfield.
And those are already major players in the casino
Already
industry,
major
in the
players
gaming
in the
industry.
business. They've all been around Massachusetts for quite a while. They're
Right.
working on this, thinking about this. So they're going to have vigorous competition, which
Okay.
is great. That was really good in Western Mass. We didn't have that in Eastern Mass at first. So
Okay.
now we have it in both, which is really important. Southeastern Mass is a horse of a different color. It's a complicated, long story. It's probably not worth going into the whole thing. But to make a long story short, in the United States, an Indian tribe has a right under federal law to have a certain kind of gambling, which basically looks like casino gambling, on their tribal land. Period. You don't have to talk to the state. There are certain rules and regulations.
Sure. But that's
basically-
their right.
That's basically their right. So the legislature was concerned that one of our Indian tribes, the Mashpee Wampanoags, might get reservation land in southeastern Massachusetts. They don't have that assignment yet, but they're working on it.
And thereby
And
creating
there'd be
another.
a 4th casino.
Yeah.
So they tried to set it up in a way that, and essentially they gave the tribe effectively a right of first refusal.
I see.
If you can get your act together quickly enough, then we will probably not do the commercial license, and you'll have the single license in the region.
Because it's up to the commission to say up to 3 licenses, not
Right.
necessarily
No,
3 licenses.
we don't have
I
to
see.
do any licenses.
Right, okay.
theoretically. So, so if we don't want to do the commercial license in southeastern Mass because the tribe gets going, we have that right. I don't know what's going to happen. There are a lot of impediments. Again, I won't go into the whole long story, but we're waiting to see how the tribe goes. I don't know how much longer we can wait because we don't want southeastern Mass to fall behind in the rest of the state in terms of getting the job generation and the revenue generation
Right,
and so
right.
forth. So
Again, trying to be fair.
trying to be fair to everybody, right? So we're trying to, on the one hand, respect the legislative intent, which is to give the tribe an opportunity to go first
Yeah.
and preclude the possibility of having 4 casinos,
Right.
2 in that region. on the one hand, but on the other hand, not prejudice southeastern Mass too much.
And wouldn't it be a bit ironical, because isn't that location of the state where the debate kind of first happened, with some communities down there passing referendum and things like that?
Well, it's been all over the place. It's been in New Bedford, Fall River.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of projects that have been looked at. And the tribe has always been a player. But at the moment, the whole thing is
Hopefully
really
that can be
complicated.
resolved.
Right.
Maybe we can move on now, talk a little bit about some of the impacts. You know, we talked a little bit about the jobs and some of the revenue. Maybe we can go a little bit more into some of the positive, and then talk about how we're going to react to some of the challenges that we may have too, be them social, be them traffic and other real tangible stuff. So maybe we could start with some of the positives.
Well, the first two positives are the ones that you mentioned, and those are clearly the main things. Job generation and economic development,
Sure.
one, and revenue generation for the state, two. Those clearly are the initial primary benefits. There are a host of related benefits that the legislature is trying to get us, has directed us to push for. Coordination with the local tourism industry.
Sure.
Support of the regional economic development plans, diverse workforce. I mean, there are other variables that they want us, the legislature wants us to push, but those are the two really big ones, I think. And the third is a lot of people like to gamble.
Yeah, sure. It adds a nice dynamic. It's fun.
For a lot of
There's
people, it's an
entertainment there.
important part of their entertainment options, and so we have economic development, we have revenue, and we have a fun activity for a lot of people. I think that's the sort of the highlights of the strengths and why we're doing this.
I did have the opportunity to speak with a gaming executive not too long ago, and he told me that really built into their business model now, that their business models has evolved in that it's more of an entertainment thing. They're
Absolutely.
looking to draw people to the shows and to the hospitality and renting rooms and things like that. I think that makes up almost half their business in some cases.
Yeah, it does. And we're pushing very hard for that kind of a facility. We don't want just a small town
Come and go type of thing.
Convenience
Sure.
casino where you go in and you play the slots.
Destination.
We want a destination resort that will attract those people back to Massachusetts who are spending their money elsewhere, but also will attract people from out of state and out of country. Those are the real high impact dollars for us. If you go from restaurant one to a casino over here, right in the same neighborhood, there's no net gain to the Commonwealth.
Right.
But if we bring in high wealth folks from China to play, or we bring people in from southern New Hampshire or from Rhode Island, Connecticut, those are high impact dollars. So we really want these destination resorts with a proliferation of entertainment activities, as you're saying.
Sure, sure. Maybe we can talk about some of the things that we're going to do to mitigate that, because with all these with all these opportunities and all these positive things, you know, the bigger it gets and the more successful it gets, unfortunately, as the numbers grow, sometimes the numbers grow on the negative effects too.
Well,
and I know that was built into the legislation, and and your commission is really taking that seriously.
Yeah. Well, first of all, the legislature mandated that we do a comprehensive baseline study of the conditions in Massachusetts, all the socioeconomic conditions, crime rates, employment,
Before
revenue,
it even starts.
Before it even starts. And then that we do year after year after year a comprehensive assessment of the impact of gaming on those variables.
Wow.
It's amazing. It's
That
an
is
incredible
amazing,
study.
actually.
It's a multi-million
Do we even
dollar
do that
project.
now?
No.
You know, like it seems like that would be something beneficial now for the lottery or for whatever else is.
Yeah, well, there's never been anything done as comprehensive as this in the gaming world, and it's rarely been done on anything when you introduce something new like this.
But you got to love the measurable, the metric
It's
there to be able
fabulous,
to.
and we're in the middle of doing that now. We're in the middle of letting a contract right now to a research team who will do this baseline study, and then we'll follow up with the longitudinal studies.
Okay.
So we're going to know a lot about what gaming does,
Sure.
good or bad. You know,
Yeah.
we're going to track the good stuff, and we're going to track the bad stuff, and then we're going to track the intervention strategies where we try to mitigate the bad stuff. So
I see.
the big problems are obviously problem gambling. There are people who get addicted to gambling, as there are people who get addicted to a lot of things.
Sure.
And there is some reason to believe that if you have more gambling available, that at least for a period of time, there's going to be increased problem gambling. So that's one big problem. We have a lot of money to deal with that. Second one is all the physical impacts on the community. Traffic is the big one.
Sure.
But also environmental impacts, and if you have parking lots, you're going to have runoff into your water supply and all the normal
and
stuff.
linkage
of
to
any
the MBTA into the airport or to wherever.
Right. So all the things that accompany any big development. This is just a big real estate development project.
Sure.
A very big real
Very
estate
big one,
development
yeah,
project.
potentially.
So all those effects have to be mitigated as well. And then the final thing is making sure that this isn't, as I've sort of said before, just a trade-off. We take $1 from one facility in Massachusetts and move it to another
Sure.
facility in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
That's not what this is about.
Because
This
then
is
you're
meant to
shifting
be
problems,
incremental.
you're shifting good things, you're shifting
Yeah.
bad things, it's just kind of moving around.
But your 10,000 jobs don't do anything if all jobs
Yeah.
that somebody else lost.
Right,
You know?
right.
So, so that we're working hard to figure out how to mitigate those impacts, how to make sure that these facilities are collaborative with other
Mm-hmm.
parts of the community, that they're not the traditional old model that your executive
Yeah.
was talking about, where you come in, you set up a big box casino, you have no windows,
Right,
no
right.
doors,
Just pump
get
the
people
oxygen in there and get 'em gaming.
Let them smoke, drink, play,
Right,
spa.
and just take every nickel out of
Take
them.
every nickel,
Yeah.
and don't let them get outside.
Right.
That's not the model
No.
anymore, and that's not what we want in Massachusetts,
Sure,
and that's
sure.
what we're working hard on to avoid.
Well, I think the prospects are great right now in terms of the commission. Maybe you can give us a little bit of a timetable, what we can look for, and maybe even have you back in 6
Great.
months or a
I'd
year.
love to. We will. We hope that we will be able to award the license for the slots parlor this year, possibly by the fall.
Okay, fall of 2013.
Fall of 2013. The casino licenses will possibly be the end of this year, more likely the first 2 or 3 months of next year.
I see.
So within a year, we should have all the licenses awarded. And then the slots parlor could be up and running in as little as 6 to 12 months.
Wow.
From depending on
From that time.
If it's a pre-existing facility or what, yeah. So we could have the job generation and the revenue and the gambling opportunities available as soon as the middle of next year.
Wow.
Certainly by the end of the next year it will start.
So you
So
think,
it's not too far away.
is it realistic to say by 2016 we'll probably have something here in
Oh,
Massachusetts?
it will be long before 2016.
Okay.
But, you know, by 2016, I think we'll have probably multiple destination resort casinos.
Built out and everything?
Yeah, pretty
wow.
well done.
Okay, so we're a couple of years away, really?
Yeah, it's not so far. The legislature is actually using some of the revenue from gaming in this next year's budget.
Oh,
Like the
okay.
governor-
Gee, this time,
Right.
so we better hope it goes.
Yeah, so
we better hope it
it's
works.
moving.
Well, Steve, it's been a great half hour. Is there anything else you'd like to sum up, give the viewers at home an opportunity if they need to contact you or find out more about the Mass Gaming Commission?
We have a very, very comprehensive website, mass.gov/gaming.
Okay.
But you can just Google the Gaming Commission
Sure.
of Massachusetts, you'll find it. And we welcome, there's a place for comments, we welcome questions, we answer everything. There are a lot of jobs being generated just in our own. We have 25 employees now, we're going to go up to 150 or 175.
Wow, okay, good.
We post all those jobs. So I would encourage people to check the website, see what we're doing, send us your comments.
Great.
You're going to be hearing the conversations about these two facilities in and around your community. We want to know what you think. So with the help of folks like you and the folks in the audience, you know, we encourage that. We
We'll
want
get the
that.
message out. And well, we're very pleased that the process is so transparent. They picked the right man for it.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Appreciate
Keep
it,
up the
David.
good
Thank
work.
you. This is great.
Thanks to Steve Crosby from the Mass Gaming Commission for joining us. I'm your host, David D'Arcangelo, and we'll see you soon with another episode of Around Town.